All right, we're going to jump right into section 3 of silly salmon. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to start making some obstacles, so other objects are going to kind of fly down towards the salmon. So the first thing we need to do is make sure you highlight the obstacle layer down here in the lower right. Okay, you want to make sure that you have that highlighted. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to add a bunch of objects to our layout. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to double click. Let's make a sprite. We are going to call it out crop left and just type it just like that, no spaces. Okay. Basically, we're going to have a left and a right outcrop object. Okay, so we're going to insert, click on the screen. Then we're going to load in the image for it. So just once again, it should be in your downloads folder. I've got mine in a slightly different area, so I'm just going to go grab mine really quick. Silly salmon. When you go into silly salmon, you have to go to images, and then it's this outcrop object right here. So you go ahead and pick that. Okay. Now the first thing you'll notice is that we need to crop it, right? Now you could just click the crop button, and you'll notice when I click the crop button, it is 122 by 242. So there's actually like a really thin row of pixels here that didn't actually go in all the way. So what we're going to do, I just press Control Z to undo that. Okay. What you want to do is you actually want to hold down Control while clicking the crop button. When you do that, it looks relatively the same, but it makes it so it's a little bit less picky and it goes in a little bit closer. And now when I click resize, it should be exactly 120 by 240. So just make sure that when you press this crop button, you hold down Control while you do it. If you didn't do it right, just press Control Z to undo. Or let's say like you mess this up and you don't know how to go back, you can just click the folder and reload it again. Okay, and then just hold Control and click on the crop. That's all you have to do. And if you click resize, it should say 120 by 240. Okay, so that's good to go there. Then what we need to do is we need to put the origin down in the lower left. So I'm going to click the origin button here, or image points button. I'm going to right click origin on the left side. I'm going to quick assign to bottom left. Okay, and then the origin should go down there to the bottom left. Then we need to set our collisions. So you're going to click on this box right here, and I would click the magnifying glass and zoom in a little bit, and you're just going to manually set the collision. So what you're going to do is just take these little red boxes and move them around to get what you want. Now you can see up here on the top, I kind of need more boxes. So if I just take like whatever box I'm on and you double click it, it'll make a new box in between. Okay, and so I could take this one and double click it and it'll add a new box here. It's giving me an error saying that I have a lot of boxes, but that's okay. Your polygon can have as many as you want. Okay. So I don't know. I'm just gonna do something like that. Like to me, this feels fairly close. Like it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. So I think that looks good to me for my collision boxes. Okay. So then you can close that. And so now you have this outcrop left object here. Okay. We're gonna place all of our objects below the layout. The reason why is because we don't want them initially they're going to be bullets and we don't want them like flying like through the screen or whatever. So we're going to put them all down here. They're all going to get destroyed anyway. So it's just easier if we put them at the bottom for now. And you notice it is called outcrop left. Now what we need to do is we need to make an outcrop right, and it uses the exact same image. So rather than remake a new sprite, what I'm going to do is you're going to go to the right side here in your project window, and you can see where my cursor is right here. You're going to right click on outcrop left. And remember on a Chromebook, the right click is you just tap with two fingers at the same time. Or if you have a mouse, you can actually right click. Okay, so that outcrop left, what you're going to do is we're going to clone it. Okay, now when you clone it, it's actually creating a second version of that object with a different name. So you can see it's called outcrop left 2. So you're going to click on outcrop left 2 one time, and you're going to go to the properties, and we're just going to rename it so that it's outcrop right. Okay, just like that. Then I'm going to take the outcrop right and drag it onto my layout. Okay, and so I should have outcrop right and the other one should be outcrop left. So the outcrop right is facing the wrong direction. So we're going to double click it and fix that. So we're going to double click it. And you're just going to click this mirror button right here where that I've highlighted in yellow. We're going to do a horizontal mirror like that. Okay, and the nice part about cloning it is that the origin's already set how we want. because we want the origin to be bottom right. And since we mirrored it, it mirrored the origin as well. It's already cropped for us and it already has the collision box. So that saved us a lot of work just by cloning it rather than remaking it. So we can close that and there's your outcrop left and your outcrop right. They should look like that. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make another sprite for an island. So now we can just double click and make a new sprite. We're going to go ahead and call this one island. Okay, and I'm going to click insert, click on the screen, load an image. There should be an image in here called island, which is right here. Okay. Once again, we're going to crop, but we're going to do control crop. So I'm going to hold control and click the crop button again. If you do it correctly, it should be 129 by 145. Yeah, I'm going to zoom in and you can see that the polygon isn't very good here. Okay. So what we're going to do on this one is I'm going to right click inside of here and I'm going to say guess polygon shape. And when you just right click it, so all I did was I right clicked in the middle and I did guess polygon shape. And you can see that's actually pretty good. It pretty much got the circle on there. So I'd say for that one, you can just do guess polygon shape and you should be good to go. Okay. Then that sprite is ready. So we can just leave the island under here. Now we're going to make another sprite called a log. So let's go and make another one. Okay, we're going to make a log. Insert, click on the screen. Okay, this one, we don't have to crop it or anything, but we have to load in the image. So I'm going to load in the image, find the log. We don't have to crop or anything. That should all be good. We do want the origin to be different though. So I'm going to click on the origin, and we want the origin to actually be at the bottom. So I'm going to right click on the origin here. I'm going to quick assign to bottom like that. And then for the collision box, you're going to have to zoom in a little bit so you can kind of get on the inside. But we're going to right click on the inside and we're going to say set to bounding box, which is just going to turn it into a nice rectangle. Okay, so you just right click inside the log here if you're on the collision polygon icon here, and you do set to bounding box. Okay, so I think the log should be good. So we can have that there. Okay, next we're going to add tires. So I'm going to double click, make another sprite. We're just going to call it tires. Insert, click on the screen. You're going to load the image, and we're going to load tires, which are right here. Oh, so the tires now, you can see if I just try to load in an image, it does it all as one sprite. So this is one. Oh no, this is correct. Yeah. I'm looking at it thinking it's an animation, but no, the tires are supposed to be a row of tires like this. So this is good. We just load in the single image. We're good to go there. Okay. We do want the origin to be the bottom on this as well. So I'm going to click the origin button here, right click the word origin over here, and quick assign bottom. Okay. Then we need to set the collision. So you can see the collision here is really bad. So I clicked on the collision icon here. You might need to zoom in a little bit. Right click inside of the blue lines here. And we are going to set to bounding box. And I think that one should be good like that. Okay, so now we have the tires down. We've got the log. Okay. Next one is the boat. And I think this is our last obstacle. So let's double click. Let's make a sprite. We'll just call it boat. This one is a little bit more complicated because it's actually has an animation. This is probably what I was thinking of when we did the tire. Okay, so for the boat I know has an animation. So what we have to do is we have to go to the animation frames window down here at the bottom. And what we're going to do to add this in is instead of loading in a single image, so I'll show you really quick. So let's pretend we load in a single image. So it's under this fisherman folder, and it's actually all these fisherman images here. And actually looking in here, I'm gonna fix this before you guys do it, or hopefully the version that you have is fixed, but some of mine have a black background on it. So I'm hoping that the ones you guys download aren't like this, but let me just go ahead and um, grab, okay, and these are single images. Okay, so that's what the fisherman looks like. So we don't want to have to load these all in one at a time. So basically what I'm saying is we need to, I can delete this one out. All right, it won't let me, but I'll delete it later. So the way you actually do this, because they're all single frames. So in the other games, like when you did Flip, the animation would be a sprite strip and it would be all the images together. And we would go down here and we'd import from a strip. This is different because these are all individual picture files instead of being all the strip on one picture. So when we do import frames, we're going to do from files. Okay. And then what you want to do is you want to get into this fisherman folder. And basically, you want to click and you want to hold control and click on every single one of these while holding down control. And then you're going to click open and it will open up all the files. And then that frame 0 was extra, so I'm going to get rid of that. And actually, those other ones showing the black background is fine. It didn't really affect anything. So that's good. So we don't have to worry about the black background on there. Okay, good. So that black was actually showing transparent. It's weird that some were white and some were black, so I was a little confused, but we're good. Okay, so we have that. And then what we need to do is we need to resize them. Okay. So we're going to click the resize button up here. You can be on any frame you want to. Actually, I think in the, yeah, we can be on any of them. So let's resize up here. And we're going to do 240 by 100. 100. And you want to make sure apply to whole animation is checked so that it resizes all of them the same way. Okay. And so now they all should be in there resized the same way. Um, then what we're going to do is we are going to change the origin. So we're going to go ahead and click on the origin here. And we want the X coordinate to be 180. This one's a little bit unique, so I can actually click up here and change the X coordinate. The Y coordinate is going to stay at 50. Okay. And then I have to right click origin and apply to whole animation. So they all have that same origin of 180 by 50. So if I click on all these, you'll see that that origin stays at 180 by 50. Okay, that's really important. Probably one of the most common mistakes on this game is kids turn it in and their fisherman or their boat is jittering left and right. And what it is they click on this frame 0, they change it to 180 by 50, but then they don't change the rest of these. So remember, to change the rest of these, you have to right click the word origin and then apply to whole animation so that it does that to all of them. Then your boat won't glitch around. That's a really common mistake that people make on this game. Okay. Um, then what we're going to do is we're going to set the collision. Now, what we find is for the collision in the presentation, they tell you to click on frame 3 and use frame 3 to guess the polygon. So we'll do that. So we'll go to frame 3 highlighted, right click in the middle. This actually isn't a bad polygon already, but we'll just say guess polygon shape. Okay, and then I'm going to right click in the middle and apply to whole animation. So then all of them are going to have that. The reason why we used frame 3, I guess 3, 4, or 6 would work. It's because frames 0, 1, and 2 have the fishing poles stretching over the edge, and that messes your polygon shape. So that's why frame 3 works, is because it's really just looking at the boat. So that's why you don't want to use 0, 1, or 2 to guess the shape. If you use 3, 4, or 5, it should work. And then you right click and apply to whole animation. Okay, so we've got the polygon shape there. We do have to change an animation setting. So I'm going to click on animation 1. We want the speed to be 8, and we want loop to be checked. Okay. After that, we should be good on the boat. And the boat can be, so all the objects here, just have them at the bottom just like I have here. We should be good to go. And they all should be on the obstacle layer because that should have been highlighted the whole time you're making these. I would just do a quick double check and just click on each one and make sure that the layer here says obstacle for all of these. So obstacle, obstacle. Yep, they all were on the correct layer for me. If any of them ended up on the background, like if you click on it and you can't highlight it, it means it could be on the background layer, which is locked. So you'd have to unlock the layer, then switch the layer, and then you can relock it again. But if you followed what I did, it should all be on the obstacle. You should be good to go. All right. Now, all of these objects are going to have the same thing for behavior. We need to give them all bullet behavior, and there's one setting we have to change in all of these. So I'm going to go one object at a time. Behaviors, add bullet. Okay. And then after you add bullet behavior on each one of these, you want to scroll down and this set angle needs to be turned off. This is extremely important that you turn this off on all of them. This is going to make it so you want that unchecked. This is going to make it so, because ideally what's going to happen is all these objects are moving down, so their angle of motion is going to be 90. Okay, if this set angle is turned on, it's going to try to move at the angle the object is facing, not necessarily 90. And all these objects by default are facing 0 degrees because right is the default. So um, all of these are going to try to move to the right away before they move down. So we have to turn set angle off so that it'll completely ignore the actual angle of the object and it's only going to move at an angle of motion that we tell it to. That's what this is for. Okay, so we're going to do that to all of them. So click the other outcrop, behaviors, bullet. So if you kind of understand this, you don't have to like watch me do all of these objects, but all of these I'm just doing bullet and then set angle off. So if you kind of get this, you can fast forward to the next part and do this all on your own. That's totally fine. So bullet behavior here on the island, and then set angle off. Fisherman or my boat, behaviors, bullet, set angle off. Okay, tires, bullet behavior, set angle off. Okay, and then log, bullet behavior, and set angle off. But what I would do is I would maybe just double check when you're done, click on each object really quick, scroll down, they should have a bullet section and set angle should be off. Okay, check this one, bullet, set angle off, bullet, set angle off. So I should be good to go. Bullet, set angle off, bullet, set angle is off, and bullet, set angle is off. This is probably a good time to save, so make sure you guys are saving often. I don't usually, in my videos, I haven't really been saying to save, but you guys just, yeah, need to save very often so you don't lose anything. Okay, so we're good to go there. Now we're going to get into some events. So the event sheet, I'll tell you right now, it does get kind of complicated, but I think as I explain it, it should make a lot more sense to you. I think kids that initially just do it and follow the directions, it might seem really confusing. So this is where watching the video is helpful because I'll kind of explain it a little bit. All right, so now we are going to our event sheet here. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at the code that you have, and you can see we did all the touch controls last time. We did all this land movement last time. So you don't want that to be like overwhelming and get in your way. So I always minimize the groups I'm not using by clicking that little arrow. So if you just minimize, it'll kind of simplify everything. It'll look like this, okay? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a global variable called game time. So out here in the open area, I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a global variable called, right click, add global variable called game time. And it can be a number and it can be 0. Um, Basically, all we're going to do is this variable is just going to track how long we're playing in seconds. And we're going to use that to help code in a way to make our game more difficult. Basically, as our game time increases, we're going to increase the game speed and we're going to tie all of our objects to the game speed variable. So that basically just by changing this variable, we're changing the speed of every object in the game. So that's why we're creating variables for these things. So that way we don't have to code each object individually. We can just tie them to the variable and then we can just basically control all of the speed through the variables. So that's what we're doing there, okay? So let's make a new group, and we're gonna make a group that'll actually create and spawn the obstacles. So I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna add a group. We're gonna call it obstacle create, okay? And if you wanna write a little description, you can, that's totally up to you, okay? So I have obstacle create, okay? And then what we're gonna do is, basically, we're going to use this game over variable. So basically, we want this group to only work if game over is 0. Because what we're going to do is when the game over variable is 1, we're going to have that be like your game over. So that way, when the game over variable triggers 1, all of the obstacle create stuff won't happen anymore. That way, it's not like spawning continuous objects when you get a game over. So that's why we do that. So we're going to add an event to obstacle create. We're going to do system. We're going to compare variable and we want game over to equal 0. So everything in the obstacle create group needs to be a sub-event of game over 0, because that means, think of it this way, game over 0 is basically saying you're alive, okay? So basically we only want the stuff in this group to happen when your character is still alive, okay? So what we'll do is, to help us remember that, we're going to right click on this game over 0 and we're going to add a comment, okay? And basically this checks if the game has ended or not. That's basically what the game over zero is. It just checks if you're actually playing the game or not. Okay. All right. Then what we need to do is we need to make it so that the game time variable will increase every 1 second. So we're basically just tracking how long we've played in seconds. So we're going to add a sub event to game over zero. So I'm going to right click, add sub event. Okay. And then, oh, did I do a blank sub event? Hold on. Right click, add. Sorry, just add a regular sub event. I did a blank one. We're going to do system and we're going to do every X seconds. Okay. And we're going to say every 1 second. So then every 1 second, we're going to add an action to that. And we're going to do system, add to, and we're going to add to game time 1. So now every 1 second, we're adding 1 to game time. So now the game time variable, if I were to run it right now, we wouldn't physically see anything. But if I ran it in debug, you would see that that variable is actually increasing every 1 second. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we are going to add another sub event to this every 1 second event. So you're going to right click here. We're going to add a sub event. Okay. Now this one's kind of tricky. We're going to create something called a modulo expression, and I'm going to explain what that is when we're done. But we're going to do a system and we're going to do compare two values. Okay. So for the first value, we're going to type game time and then the percent symbol, which is shift 5, and then the number 2 is equal to 0. Okay. This is a modulo expression at the top. Basically, what the percent sign means, it's going to divide the two numbers and find the remainder. So basically, it's going to check if so it's going to take the game time and divide it by 2. And then if that is equal to 0, this is going to trigger. So basically, anytime you take the game time divided by 2 and the remainder is 0, this will trigger. A simple way to think of this is going to trigger every 2 seconds. Because every time the game time adds 2 seconds to it, this is going to return a remainder of 0. Okay, so let's make a comment on that to help us remember. So I'm going to right click and add a comment. And basically the comment here, we will just say every 2 seconds. And then we haven't done it yet, but basically, we will create a chance for something to spawn. So we'll say every 2 seconds, there's a chance for something to spawn. And you can change this later, like if there's a different way that makes more sense to you. Just whatever comment there is gonna make sense to you. But this modulo expression is saying every 2 seconds something is going to happen. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we need to add a local variable in here to help us determine something. So this is actually a really common technique you're going to use in other games. It's a really good one to understand, but basically there are times in the game where you just want a chance for something to happen, or like you want an enemy to have a chance to drop something. This is kind of the method you would use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this game time expression here. We're going to add, and then we're going to do a local variable, and we're going to call it chance, and it can equal 0. Okay. Um, then what we're going to do is we're going to add an action to this. And we are going to do system set value. And we're going to set chance to basically choose a random number. So kind of the idea with this variable is you'd make like a chance variable. You have a chance that it will choose a random number. And then basically based on the number it chooses, you can do different things with the game. Okay, so we're basically just having it randomize certain things and then do different things based on what we get. Okay, so the what we're going to type in for the value here is we're going to type in an equation. So we're going to type in the word floor, and it should pop up. Then you're going to do a left parentheses, and we're going to type in the word random. Then we're going to do another left parentheses, and we're going to type in 10, and then 2 right parentheses. Okay. Basically, what this statement means, Random 10 basically means that it's going to randomly choose a number out of 10 different numbers. A computer starts counting at 0. So random 10 is going to be a number from 0 to 9 because that's 10 different numbers. I know a lot of people assume that 10 would be included in that, but the number 10 is not included in this. It's 0 to 9, which are 10 different numbers. Now, when a computer randomizes from a set of numbers, it will include decimals. So it could come up with 5.2237, whatever. Like it's very rarely going to hit a nice clean number because there's so many decimal possibilities. So the word floor in the front means it's going to round it down to a whole number. So if random 10 comes up with 6.75, it'll just round it down to 6. Okay. There is a way to round up. You would type in CEIL, which is short for ceiling. So ceiling would round up. Okay. If you don't want it to round at all, you could type int, INT in the front, and that just chops off the decimal. It makes it an integer. And int is something we've used before. So basically, this code is saying randomly choose a number from 0 to 9 and round it down to a whole number. That's what this is saying. Okay. So it's going to choose a random number from 0 to 9. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we are going to go on this modulo expression, this game time %2 here. Okay. And we have to make a couple of sub-events now because this sub-event says every 2 seconds, it's going to set chance to basically a number between 0 and 9. Then we have to tell it based on which numbers what's going to happen. So we're going to set up a range here. So we're going to add a sub-event to this game time %2. So add sub-event. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do system and we're going to type in is between values. It's this one right here. Okay. So the value is we want to know if the chance is a certain value. And then we can just pick a lower bound and an upper bound. So we're going to say if chance is between 0 and 4. So 0 is going to be the lower bound. We're going to do 4 is the upper bound. Okay. So basically this says if chance is between, so what's happening here, if we kind of read what we have, game over 0 means that we're still alive. Every 1 second we're adding to game time. And then every 2 seconds, every time game time is divisible by 2, so every 2 seconds, we're going to set chance to from 0 to 9. And then if chance falls between 0 and 4, whatever we put in this action is going to happen. Okay. So let's make a comment here. So on the 0 to 4, let's add a comment so we remember what this does. Comments are a lot more important now because the code is getting pretty complicated, right? So basically what this code means, we're going to make it so that if it's 0 to 4, it's going to spawn a land object. So we're going to say if chance is 0 to 4, create a land object. Okay. So that's what that comment means. So I just right-clicked there and made the comment there. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set up the other range of values. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another sub-event on the game time %2 event. So I'm going to right-click here, add another sub-event. We're going to do system is between values again. Okay, and basically we're going to check chance, and we're going to set up the second range of values. The second range of values we're going to do from 5 to 7. Okay. So now we've got a range of what will happen from 5 to 7. And what we're going to do is if it's 5 to 7, we're going to create a river object. So let's go ahead and put a comment so we remember that. So I'm going to add a comment on the 5 to 7. And we're going to say if, whoops, if chance is 5 to 7, we will create a river. Okay. And we're going to come back to the 5 to 7 later, but right now we're going to look at the land stuff. But we just want to get that set up, right? Okay. Now, we have to add, before we can start coding for our land object, we do need a couple more local variables here. So on the 0 to 4, you're going to right-click and add a local variable. Okay. One is going to be called land object, and it can equal 0. Okay. I'm going to right-click on the 0 to 4 again, and I'm going to add another local variable, and we're going to have one that's called double. And I'll explain what these are for in a second, and double can also equal 0. Okay. All right. So what this is if we look back at our game here, we have several land objects. So these outcrops in the island, those are going to be considered our land objects. The log, the tires, and the boat are considered our river objects, okay? So basically what we have to do is this land object variable is going to be something that we randomize, and we're going to use it to choose which object spawns, okay? We're going to also have this double variable because we might have it where we could spawn two outcrops at the same time. So basically, if this double procs, then that's going to maybe spawn more than one object at a time. So that's why we need these multiple variables. Okay. Something you guys have probably figured out by now is variables are mainly used to just control things and help give us more detail to tell the computer what we want. Because there's not an easy way to say, sometimes spawn a outcrop left and sometimes spawn both. We have to use these variables to have those details in there to be able to tell it. Okay. All right. So we have that. So what we're going to do now that we have these, we're going to basically randomize the land object and we're going to randomize the double. So I'm going to add an action here. I'm going to do system set value. Set value, and we're going to set land object. And what we'll do for land object is we'll just do floor random 3. So we'll do floor. So this is the same as the last one. Floor, parentheses, random, parentheses, 3, and then double parentheses at the end. Okay, so remember, random 3 is going to be a number from 0 to 2. Floor is going to round it down. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. So system, set value, and we're going to set double. And double is going to just be floor random 2. Now, another way you could do this is because this event is similar to the last one I just did. So you could have just copied the last event and then edited it. So that's fine too if you want to do that. So floor random 2, just like that. Okay. So basically, and you can see here why the sub-eventing is important, because the more something is indented, it basically has to pass through all of these other ones before this code is reached. So basically, if game over is 0 and it's in every other second and chance is 0 to 4, then this finally triggers. And then once this triggers, land object is going to pick a value and double is going to pick a value. Okay. All right, so we have that. And so now let's add some sub-events to this 0 to 4. So I'm going to add a sub-event, and basically we have to make a sub-event for what happens if land object equals a certain thing, right? So we're going to do system, compare variable, and we want to compare if land object is equal to 0. Okay. Um, and then what we're going to do is I'm just going to copy this land object as 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click it and copy it. I'm going to just right click and paste, and then I'm going to just right click and paste again. And I just did that all right on the same object, okay? Basically, we want to have a land object 0, and this land object can be 1, and this land object can be 2. If you prefer to just do this all manually, you can, but they should be all lined up even just like this, okay? And I can extend this out a little bit to make that a little bit more readable, okay? So it should look like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just make a comment on each one. So if it's 0, it's going to be an outcrop left. So I'm going to right click and add a comment on the 0. Okay, and we're going to say create outcrop left. Okay. Land object 1 is going to be the island. So I'm going to make a comment on that. So add comment. We're going to say create island. And land object 2 is going to be outcrop right. So I'm going to right click and add a comment. We're going to do create outcrop right. Okay. All right, so now we know what each of these land objects is going to spawn. Now we just have to put the code in for it, right? So this one's outcrop left. So I'm going to add an action on the land object 0. We're going to do system create object. We are going to create an outcrop left. Okay. Now the layer and the X and Y position are really important. Okay. So we want them to be on the obstacle layer, and you can see down here in the lower right, number 2 is the obstacle layer. So for layer, I'm going to put the number 2. Okay. The other way you could do it is if you don't want to use the layer numbers, you could type a quotation mark and you could actually directly say spawn on the obstacle layer. So either way works. Sometimes labeling it by name is a little bit better just because if you were to flip-flop, like if you decided to move the obstacle layer below the game layer then becomes 2, and then it would still spawn, then it would go to the game layer instead of the obstacle layer. So whatever way you want to do it, but 2 should be fine as long as you have your layers in the correct order, okay? And then we're going to spawn it at 120 for X and -10 for Y. The reason why we do -10 for Y is if you remember on our layout, the very top of the layout Y is 0 and it increases as you go down. So basically by spawning it at -10, we're just spawning it 10 pixels above the layout. Because the whole idea is we want to spawn these objects above us and they're going to move down towards us. So that's why it's spawning at -10. Okay. Now the other thing that happens when we spawn an outcrop or a new object, we have to change the bullet angle of motion to tell it to move down. And we have to line it up to our game speed variable at the top so that it becomes whatever speed that is at the time. So we're going to add an action for outcrop left. We're going to do set angle of motion. Set angle of motion to 90. 90 is down. Okay. And then we have to set the outcrop left's bullet speed to game speed. So I'm going to add another action for outcrop left. Just type in speed. Make sure you do the bullet speed, not the animation speed. And then you just type in game speed, and it should pick up the global variable game speed, okay? So basically what's going to happen is we're going to essentially do the exact same thing to these other 3 for the other objects, okay? So here's what we can do. You can do them manually or we can copy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold control, and I'm going to click all 3 of these. And then while holding control, I'm going to drag a set down to here. And then while holding control, I'm going to drag a set down to here. Now what we have to do is land object 1 is the island. So when I see an outcrop left, I got to right click it and I got to do replace object. And I'm going to replace outcrop left with the island. So that changed to an island. So I have to do that on all these. Replace object with an island. Replace this outcrop left with an island. So there should be 3 of them. Now the island is going to have a different position also. So the island, you have to double click on this to get the position. And we're going to change it to 360 for the X. The -10 is still fine, but we're changing the X coordinate, okay? Because we want the island to be right in the middle, and 360 is the exact middle of our layout because it's a 720 wide layout. All right, so I think we're good there. Islands in the middle, we got all that. All right, so now we have to do the outcrop right. So we're going to take all of these on number 2, replace object. We have to change the left with the right, do the same thing here. Replace object. It's really important too that you can actually read this. Like if this is moved over, it just says outcrop, like you can't read the whole thing. So it's important to move it over so you tell it at least enough that this is the right and this is the left. And then this one here has to be, so there should be 3 replacements. Okay, and then the position for the outcrop right is at 600 for the X. Okay, so this is what the code should look like. Okay, so you can pause the video, look at this, and make sure that yours looks just like this. All right, so we're going on to the next part now. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go back to this land object equals 0 up here. And now what we have to do is when a land object spawns, like an outcrop left, we want to know if the double triggers, because if the double triggers, then we're going to spawn something else, okay? So what we're going to do is the double, it's going to be a number, it's either going to be 0 or 1. That's what floor random 2 is. So we're just going to say if double is 1, we're going to get an extra object. So we're going to add a sub event onto land object equals 0. So add sub event. And we want system, compare variable. And we want to know if double is equal to 1. Okay. So now it should look like this. It should be sub evented to that land object 0. Okay. And let's make a comment on this. So let's right click and add a comment. Okay. And basically it's saying if double is 1, then spawn an additional land object. Okay. That's basically what this code is going to be for. Okay. So because this event, so land object 0 is spawning an outcrop left. If we get another object, we don't want to do another outcrop left. We would want to be an outcrop right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the outcrop right spawning code. So I'm just going to copy all of this from land object is 0. I'm going to hold control and I'm going to drag it up to this double right here. Now make sure you copied it and you didn't move it. You still want the code down here and we're just moving it up here. If copying that confuses you, you can just manually put this in. So basically if double is 1, we're going to spawn the outcrop right. We still have to set the angle of motion. We still have to set the game speed. All of those should say outcrop right, and outcrop right is always going to be at 600 for the position. Okay. Okay, so we've got that. Then what we're going to do is basically if land object is 2, we have the outcrop right. If double is 1, we're going to spawn outcrop left. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy the comment and the whole event of the double 1. So I clicked on the far left here, held control, click that and the comment, and then holding control, I'm going to drag this as a sub event to land object 2. So it should look like this. Oops, I forgot to put that on an additional land object. Okay, so now since this one's already spawning outcrop right, we want this to be outcrop left. So what I can do is I could either edit these to outcrop left and change the thing here, or I could just delete them out and I could copy an outcrop left spawn from up here. I could just copy that and pull that down. Whatever way works for you, but this is what it should look like. So once again, you can pause your computer and make sure that this looks correct. Also, just know that in the Silly Salmon game instructions, I do have something called sample code where you literally can click and just look at the finished code at any time. So you can always compare to this if you need to, even if you're not watching the video. Okay. So that should be it for that part. Now we're going to go to land object equals 1. Okay. This is the one where we make the island. Now this one's a little bit more complicated because this one could spawn an outcrop left or an outcrop right. So we have to have an additional variable to tell us if it's going to spawn on the left or the right side of the island. We don't want to make it so either can spawn at the same time because you don't want a situation where it spawns an island, an outcrop left, and an outcrop right at the same time, because then it's going to make it impossible to win. What would happen is all three would spawn and there wouldn't be a lane for your fish to go. Okay. So we need to make a local variable here. So on land object equals 1, you're going to right click. We're going to add a local variable and we're going to call it side. Okay. And that side can equal 0. Okay. And then basically that local number is just going to tell us which side the extra object is going to spawn on. Okay. All right. So then we're going to put the double on here. Okay. So let's just add a sub event to land object equals 1. Sub event, okay, and then we're going to do system compare variable. We want double to equal 1 because that's determining that we're getting a double object. Okay. Um, um, on this local number side, let's go ahead and on land object 1, or actually, yeah, on land object 1, let's add a comment here really quick. Add a comment, and this is going to go right underneath the side, and it's going to say determines which side to spawn on. I think that would be good to put that there so that we know that side is saying determines which side to spawn on. Okay. Okay. We have double equals 1. Okay. So now when double equals 1, normally on the other ones, we would just create the object right away. But now instead of creating an object, the action here is we're going to set the value of side to 1 or 2 so that we know if it's going to be a left or a right. So I'm going to add an action for system. We're going to set value and we're going to change side. Okay. And it's just going to be floor random 2. Floor random and parentheses 2, double parentheses, whoops. Accidentally touched my screen there. 2, just like that. Okay. All right, so it should be floor random 2 like that. Okay. Then what we have to do is now we have to sub-event into the double, and we have to say if side is 0, do something. If side is 1, do something. So now we're going to sub-event again. System, compare variable. Where is it? Compare variable. And then we want to know if side is equal to 0. Okay, and we can add another sub-event to the same spot. So it'd be to double equals 1 sub-event, add sub-event. System, compare variable. We want side to be equal to 1. Okay, like that. Okay, so now if side is 0 or if side is 1. So on side 0, we can just add a comment. And here we'll say spawn on left side. And we'll say if side equals 1, we'll spawn on the right side. So I'll right click here, add comment. We'll say on right side. Okay. Okay, so now we know which side they're going to spawn on. And then basically, if it spawns on the left side, we want outcrop left. So what I would do is find an outcrop left section here and copy all three. So I'm going to hold control, and I'm going to hold control, individually click on each one, and then holding control, I'm going to drag them down to where it says, whoops, where it says side equals 0. So that's spawn on the left side right there. Okay, so on side 0, you should have the outcrop left spawn code right here. And then for right side, we're going to get the right outcrop right code, which is right here. Hold control, and then click and drag them all to the side 1, like that. Okay, so that's what that should look like. So I know it gets kind of complicated. You can see we have all the sub-eventing going on, right? And just know that on the sub-events, all of these little arrows can be minimized. So like I could just minimize this and say, okay, so like you could kind of take it step by step and think how the computer does, right? So the computer is going to read if game over 0. If it's true, it's going to open this up. And then every 1 second, it's going to add the game time. So it's just going to do that no matter what. So it's going to open up again. And then if game time is basically if it's every other second, so if it's divisible and gets an equal remainder or the remainder is 0. So basically if it's in every other second, it's going to set chance to one of these. Okay. And then if chance is 0 to 4, it's going to do all this code. And then if chance is 5 to 7, it'll do the code that we put in there later. Okay. And then it's going to check if it's 0 to 4, then it's going to set the land object and it's going to set the double. And then if land object is this, it's going to do that. So, I mean, I kind of explained it. I'm not going to sit and just talk through it again, but hopefully that makes sense to you. I know it seems really complicated, but I hope hearing me kind of explain that part helps a little bit. All right. So then what we're going to do, oh, and you know what? On this side equals 1, I think this should still work, but in the presentation, they have you make this an else. So what we're going to do is let's just edit this just to make sure, because else is a little bit safer because it basically just means if it's not 0, it'll trigger. So let's just change this to else instead. So all I did was I double clicked it. I clicked back to go to the back page, and then I just changed it to else. Okay, so let's change that to an else just to be safe. Okay. But that's basically if side equals 1. I think the way we had it would still work just fine, but I'm going to follow the presentation just to be safe. All right, everything here I think looks good to me right now. So we're getting close. Basically, the last thing we need to do is we're going to do the same stuff for 5 to 7 to get the river objects in. And then we basically just have to add a quick group to destroy the objects when we're done. So we're getting there. I know these videos are long. It's just a much more complicated game, okay? All right, so we're going to add a local variable here for river object. So I'm going to right click on the 5 to 7. We're going to add a local variable, and it's going to be called river object. Whoops. River object, and it's going to equal 0. That's fine. Whoops, I accidentally undid that, didn't I? Add local variable, river object. I clicked cancel instead of okay. All right, so I have my local number, river object. And then if it's 5 to 7, we're basically going to tell the river object to do floor random 3. So I'm going to add an action, system, set value, river object. and we're going to type in floor, and then we're going to do random, then we're going to do 3. Okay, so that looks good there. Then basically what we have to do is we have to make sub-events that says if river object is 0, 1, or 2. So I'm going to add a sub-event to the 5 to 7. I'm going to do system, compare variable. And I want to know if river object equals 0. And then basically I can just copy this. So I could right-click, copy, right-click, paste, right-click, paste again. And then I want river object 1. And I want river object 2. Okay. And then we can put a comment on each one. So let's say river object 0 is going to be the log. So I'm going to add a comment on river object 0. So add comment. So we'll just type log river object 1, add comment. 1 is going to be the tires. Then we'll add comment here. On river object 2, river object 2 is going to be the boat. Okay, so now we've got these set and labeled so that if that river object equals 0, 1, or 2, these are the objects we're going to spawn. Okay, so then this is going to be very similar to the code we did on the outcrop. So let's just type this one fresh, and then we can maybe copy for the other ones. So I'm going to add an action. We're going to do system, create object. We're going to make the log. Okay. For the river objects, we're going to put those on the game layer, which is layer 1. So we're going to do layer 1. And the X is going to be 360. We're going to do -10 for the Y. Okay, I'm going to click done. And then we have to do the angle of motion to 90, and then we have to set the speed to game speed. So add an action for log. We're going to do angle of motion to 90. And we're going to add an action for the log again. And we're going to do speed. And we're going to do bullet speed to game speed. And maybe going a little bit faster because it's very similar to what we've done already. Okay, so 0 is going to be the log, angle of motion 90, game speed. So let's go ahead and copy these 3. And let's put them on river object 1 and on river object 2. Okay. River object 1, we're going to replace the log with tires. So I'm going to right click, replace object. We're going to do tires, replace object here. And we're going to do tires and replace this one. So there should be 3 replacing just like we did on the last one with tires. Okay. And then on the tires, 360 -10 is actually fine. All of this is fine. We just had to replace there. Okay. For this one on the boat, we're actually I'm going to take these off because the boat's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to structure this a little bit different. So you can delete those out. Just leave this river object 2. What we need to do is the boat is going to be a little bit more complicated because we're going to make it so the boat can face 2 different directions. So we're going to make it so the boat's either facing left or right, which will slightly change the way it's positioned on the map. Okay, so on the river object 2 for the boat, we're going to add a local variable. Okay, and it's going to be called boat direction. Boat direction. Okay, and that can just equal 0. Okay, click OK. So we have the boat direction. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to add a sub event to the river object. Add sub event to river object equals 2. And we're just going to do system, compare variable. We want to know if boat direction is equal to 0. Okay. We are going to set angle of motion to 90. So we're going to do add action for the boat. Or not set angle of motion, it's just set the angle. So we want to just do this top set angle. And we're going to set that to 180. 180 means that like this boat would face left if it's 0. And actually, the spawn code I had up here, this was correct. So we can put this back in, my bad. So let's just copy the tire code over and then just replace the tires with boat. Place object with boat. Oh, and that time I had it all selected, so it just did it all at the same time. Yeah, so that's the thing. When I do replace object, if I just right click it, it'll do one object. But if I hold control and select all of the events and then right click replace object, it does them all at the same time. So that's something I could have mentioned earlier. Um, but yeah, the boat, this is all correct. All right, so that's how that should look. So basically, no matter what, if river direction is 2, it's going to make a boat. But then if the boat direction happens to be 0, then it will set it to 180, okay? The other thing we have to do is we have to set the boat direction. So we didn't do that yet. So I'm going to add an action here for system set value. We have to do boat direction, has to be set to floor random 2. So we'll do floor random and then 2 like that. And this boat direction I think should be at the very top. So I technically was supposed to put that in first and then copy the code in, but that's fine. So basically if river object is 2, it'll set the boat direction to floor random 2. It's going to spawn the boat. And then if the boat direction is 0, it's going to set the angle to 180. Okay, perfect. All right, we're almost done. So the last thing, well, let's just run the game quick. What should happen is it should hopefully randomly spawn stuff. But what's going to happen is if you keep running it, the game's going to get laggy because all those objects are going off screen, but they're not getting destroyed. So what we need to do is we need to make a group to destroy the obstacles. One thing I'm going to do too is I'm just going to check that everything lines up correctly. So we want to make sure that all the river objects look even with each other. So I'm going to just minimize that. So all the river objects are even, and then the 5 to 7 is right there, okay? Then the land objects, if I minimize all of those by clicking these little black arrows, these land objects should all be even, and they should all be a sub-event of 0 to 4. And if I minimize 0 to 4, that should be even with the 5 to 7. And then those both should be a sub-event of the game time. And then the game time should be a sub-event of the every 1 second. And actually, I'll have to double check, but it might, no, yeah, I think we have that right. And then that should be a sub-event of that because the code was working. So yeah, I think we're good. All right, so I'm gonna just minimize the obstacle create group, and we're just gonna make an obstacle destroy group. So I'm gonna right click, add group, obstacle destroy, okay. All right, and then in this group, this is pretty basic. We're just gonna make it so that when the object falls off the bottom of the screen that we destroy it. So I'm gonna add an event to obstacle destroy, and I'm just gonna do outcrop left, and I'm gonna do compare Y, okay? And basically, I wanna know if the Y is greater than, and for the coordinate, it's gonna be layout, layout dot, or it's layout height, yep. All right, it's layout height plus self dot height. Okay, done. And then we're going to add an action and we're going to do outcrop left destroy. Okay, so basically what this is saying is if the outcrop's y coordinate is greater than the layout's height plus its own height, it's going to get destroyed, right? So if we look at this, my layout height is 720. That's how tall it is, right? So basically it's saying, and then if I look at the height of my outcrop, the height is 240. So basically when we say layout height, it's going to take 720. Let me double check. 720 is the height. Yep, 720 is the height. It's going to take 720 plus 240. And basically when I reach that height, basically it's saying, because my origin is here at the bottom left, right? So basically when it's right here touching, my y is 720. So I said 720 plus the height of my object. So it's going to move down the entire height of my object, and that's the point it gets destroyed. Okay, so basically the moment it leaves this bar, the back end leaves the bar, that's when it gets destroyed. So basically, we just need to do this exact same thing for every object. So what I'm going to do is we need what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more of these. So I'm just going to right click copy, and I'm just going to paste like 5 more of these. Paste, 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 right click, paste. Okay, one more, I think. Right click, paste. Okay, and then all we have to do is, and I might move this over a little bit. So we're gonna make this one outcrop right. So I'm just going to, I might select the whole event, right click, replace object, outcrop right. Yep, so outcrop left is gonna change to outcrop right. So I'm gonna right click this one, replace object with outcrop right. So this is outcrop left, this is outcrop right? And then we have to do what? The island, the log, the tires, and the boat. So just make this one, replace object, and we're going to do island, replace this one with island, replace this one. We can do boat, replace this one with the boat, replace this one. We have to do the log and the tires. So let's do log, replace object with the log, replace this one with tires, and replace this one with tires. Okay, and that should all be good. So now if you run the game, basically any object when it falls off, it should get destroyed. Okay, so there's my outcrops. That's good because the first time I ran it, I didn't see any of those. I just got really unlucky. I was kind of worried something wasn't working. Okay, the way you can test this is if you go up to the play button here and you click the arrow next to it, you can actually debug it. And then when you're debugging like this, um, it'll actually show you how many objects are here on the left side. So I could check how many land lefts I have, and that number should be going down, and like some should be getting destroyed as they go through, and I should never end up with more than a certain amount on there. Okay. Now the reason why these numbers are staying at 2 is because um, we haven't actually destroyed all of these on start of layout yet. So I think that's going to be in the next video. But eventually you're going to add actions here to destroy all of those land objects on start of layout. All right, so we'll call it right there for section 3.